The director of the Workplace Research Centre, Dr. John Buchanan, says rural and regional areas of Australia are undergoing fundamental changes affecting the workforce.
Smaller towns are being folded into larger towns. Many of the practices that prevailed in the past won't work anymore. So in the past, when you had 1 Australian in 4 working in the bush, and that was as recently as the 1940s, that 25% of the population was in rural industries, the arrangements that operated then don't operate in an environment where only 5% of the population is the case. And so what we're arguing as researchers is that we need to look at how we build on the best of the traditions that emerged around the family farm, but move beyond it. Family farms are no longer adequate for providing lots of the skills that are needed, and we need to get new arrangements where farmers cooperate with each other and with education institutions to build up the stock of people with the skills they need to move forward. Education institutions can't do it on their own, and family farmers can't do it on their own. We've got to have a better networking of them to solve that problem. Yeah, we've looked at dairy farmers, mainly in Victoria, studied them at quite some length. The Victorian dairy farmers have been the winners of dairy deregulation, but they've had particularly acute problems in getting the lower skilled labour that they need. So there's enough farmers to run the farms, but not enough farm hands. And we've been exploring issues such as, are they paying them enough? Are they treating them well? Because what we've found is because family members are no longer as significant a proportion as the workforce as people who have come from outside the industry enter it, the farmers assume they're idiots if they don't know what to do, but in fact, because they've been raised on the farm, they don't know what to do. And so there's got to be dialogue on both sides, and our recommendations are very much about how can we give the farmers the labour they need, but equally how to change farmers' practices so they look after the labour they do get. There needs to be a broader vision of what skills are. And if you simply break skills up into little units of competence and accredit people for little units of competence that are needed tomorrow, that's not a very attractive prospect to workers. And so we think there's a need to talk about a vocation in farm work or a vocation in animal and land husbandry. And there are people who are interested in that broader vision, a notion, if you like, a career on the land. And we think if you move initiatives in that way, you'll attract more people in. Simply relying on training people in the short run to meet an immediate need is not a very attractive prospect for many people. If you can't afford to pay a decent rate of pay, then maybe the industry isn't viable. And that happens in the textiles and clothing and footwear industry. It's happening in the car industry today. I mean, it's a sad state of affairs, but if a business can't maintain community standards, maybe that labour and that capital is better deployed elsewhere. The deep-seated problems around skill shortages can't be solved by farmers operating on their own, farm by farm, and it can't be solved by education institutions operating on their own. It's only by groups of farmers coordinating with relevant training providers that you'll actually be able to increase the choices that are available to students, potential farm workers and farmers. Now, there have been some initiatives around the Narrabri region which are exploring these kind of ideas, and they are very welcome and they are leading edge within Australia. But to overcome what's known as the collective action problem is not easy, and it will need support. So having the parties at least talking to each other is a first step, but then going to need to get active support from state and federal governments if they're to go further. You need groups like AgriFoods to play a facilitative role. They can't solve these problems on their own, but what they can do is get all the relevant players together, get a discussion going, and then hopefully get an agreement on how people can move together in a coordinated fashion. And I think they're playing a very, very inspiring role in that regard.